Last week on MCrider, we discussed trail braking versus the slow look, press, and roll technique. Well, this week we're going to dive a little deeper into trail braking. I'll give you some tips on learning the technique and how I practice it on a parking lot. So many of the comments I saw in last week's video related to how much brake pressure should be used with the front brake when you're trail braking. Well, before we discuss that, let's talk about the reasons why using the front brake into a turn is beneficial, in my opinion. First, it keeps the contact patch of the tire planted as you're leaning the motorcycle over, giving you increased traction. So let's get our demo bike here. As you're riding up on the road, remember when you apply the front brakes in a stop, the weight of the motorcycle transfers to the front. The same thing happens when you're approaching a corner. You apply some of the braking pressure and the motorcycle leans to the front, or the weight of the motorcycle goes up to the front. That increases the contact patch, and you're getting ready to lean that motorcycle over into a corner. So it gives you more cornering traction because you've already got that tire preloaded. Second, because the fork is compressed, it shortens the wheelbase of the motorcycle, making it turn sharper. So the forks on a motorcycle are not straight up and down, they're at an angle. So when the weight transfers to the front of the motorcycle and that front tire goes up, it goes up and in, thereby decreasing the wheelbase of the motorcycle, making it turn sharper. Now, it's a little bit different on my Goldwing behind me because of the way that the front end or the suspension works on the front end of that. That tire moves more straight up and down, so you don't get the benefit from it there. But on most bikes, that angle of the fork, the more that fork is angled, when that tire or the forks compress, this tire actually gets closer to the rear tire, making the motorcycle more flickable or turn easier. And third, because the brakes are already applied, it keeps the weight forward, putting the geometry of the motorcycle in the proper setup if you need to apply more brakes. So I'm approaching the corner, I apply brakes to slow the motorcycle down, I maintain pressure on that front brake. That's going to cause me to have more traction with the front. And if I need to slow down, if there's something in the corner or that corner is wider than I thought it was, I'm already in a proper position to be able to gently apply a little more brake to that tire in order to get the motorcycle to a stop. Where if I'm using that slow look, press, and roll technique, remember, I'm riding in, I slow down, then I'm off the brakes, and I'm rolling on the throttle. Now if I need to apply more brakes, I've got to get that front end or the weight of the motorcycle back on the front tire before I can go to the maximum braking that I would be allowed to before that tire loses traction. So that brings us back to that question, how much pressure on the front brake does it keep the motorcycle in this position where the weight of the motorcycle is on the front tire? Well, the truth of the answer is not much. In fact, you can practice this in your garage before you ever go out and try to practice trail braking out on a parking lot. I encourage you to do this. Just get on your motorcycle in the garage, put the motorcycle in neutral, get in a riding position, side stand up, feet on the ground. As you squeeze that front brake in, at some point you're squeezing that brake in, you'll hear a little click. So go out in the garage and try this for yourself. You'll hear a little click. What that click is the switch that activates the tail light. It's also telling you when the calipers on that front brake are squeezing on the rotor, about that point where they're beginning to apply some pressure on that rotor. So, not applying any front brake, just roll the motorcycle back and forth, then gently start squeezing that front brake in just a little bit past where you hear that click. At some point, you'll feel resistance from the motorcycle because the calipers are meeting the rotor. If you can still roll the motorcycle forward and backwards, but you're feeling that resistance from the front brake, that's all the pressure that it really requires in order to keep the weight on the front tire and to start experiencing some of the benefits of trail braking. At that type of pressure, you're not putting yourself at any risk of losing the front tire. You've got a whole lot of traction in reserve, but it's just a little bit of pressure. It's just past that point where the tail light begins to activate, and you can practice this in your garage before you're ever out at road speed. So let's get out of the garage. We'll get on the Goldwing, and I'll go out to a parking lot, and we'll talk some more about the technique, and I'll show you how I practice it out there. So here we are out on an empty parking lot that works well to practice some trail braking. There's no threat of traffic, and as I'm doing the riding, I'm keeping the motorcycle in second gear. All I want to do is focus on smoothly performing trail braking. As I approach these corners, I'm slowing down just as I would using the slow look press and roll technique, but now I'm maintaining some slight pressure on the front brake into the corner. So remember, the pressure on the brake is really slight. Our practice in the garage before doing this out on the street, I was applying just enough pressure on the front brake in the garage with the bike in neutral so that I could continue rolling it back and forth, but I would feel the resistance of the brakes. So that's the same pressure that I'm applying to the front brake as I'm going into these corners. So I'm maintaining pressure on the front brake up until the point you hear and see me roll back on the throttle. Well, how long do you maintain pressure on the front brake? Or how far in the corner do you brake? Well, there's an easy answer to that because every corner is different. You maintain pressure on the front brake until you are comfortable with the speed and direction of the motorcycle. So let me repeat that. Maintain pressure on the front brake until you are comfortable with the speed and the direction of the motorcycle. That simplifies it a lot. You don't have to worry about the apex of the corner. You don't have to worry about where that apex is or where I should release the brakes at what point. Just maintain that slight pressure until you're comfortable with the speed and the direction of the motorcycle. And once you're comfortable with the speed and the direction of the motorcycle, you can begin to smoothly release the brakes and smoothly roll back on the throttle. Think smooth, minute movements of the brake hand and throttle. If the motorcycle seems jerky or out of balance, you're doing something wrong. The whole process should be very smooth and relaxed. Okay, now I'm going to start intentionally going into the corners a little hotter. Once you get the hang of the technique over a few practice sessions, try increasing your speed slightly in the straightaway. The increased speed will allow you to maintain trail braking a little farther into the corner. So go out and practice this technique. Get good at it in a parking lot and then try using it on the street. Leave a comment below and tell me what you think of your trail braking sessions and your practice. But we'll have a real discussion on this on the forums. You can become a member at MCrider.com/support or MCrider.com/member and get access to the forums and the field guide where we'll be discussing trail braking and thousands of other topics that will help you become a better rider. Until next week, guys, this is Kevin with MCrider, and I'll see y'all.